You don't have to repaint the prison. Okay, you don't need to put pictures on the walls. Cut the weeds outside the bars just to make it a bit of a prettier view. You don't need to, get a nice comfier couch in there. Get a bigger TV. You need to open the door and walk yourself out. Okay? Just open the door and walk yourself out. Where are you walking yourself out to? Back into here. Back into the moment. 100%. Hello and welcome to the Mind Detox podcast. Here we're going to discover a new way to think, feel and heal while exploring our spiritual side. This podcast includes highlights from my online club and academy meetings, expert interviews, guided meditations and more. All so that you can cure the cause and master peace. For today's episode, I share a highlight from one of my online club meetings, which you can join at minddetox.club. I begin by sharing how, during the past year, we've had many of our classical ideas of freedom challenged, and how we have a rare opportunity to go beyond fear by finding the true source of freedom. Stay tuned, because I reveal the mechanics of personal imprisonment and what we can do right now to liberate our life. Well, hello and welcome to this clubcast with me, Sandy, and I'm really excited that you come to join me to start your personal march to freedom. It's March, and I wanted to talk about freedom because let's be honest. We've been touching upon it throughout the year, but the last year has been pretty challenging for freedoms. Let's be honest, okay? Many of the freedoms that we took for granted aren't currently here, and this could date the video, but I still think if you keep listening, because we're going somewhere with this, which is timeless. But personally, you might remember I was marooned in Mexico for 7 months, unable to get back to my house. I had to cancel my wedding. Many conferences that I had lined up. Some of the biggest conference I was ever going to do got cancelled this in the past year. And what else happened? Normally at this time of year I'm somewhere else, but we can't go right now. And I'm not seeing my parents in over a year, and they're in their mid-70s, and it's tricky, And so we've all had personal impacts. I'm sure if we went around, we could all list 5 to 10 ways that we've all had our personal freedoms impacted. And please don't go into it in the chat box. I don't want us to focus on that right now. But I just want to kind of put into context that the classical freedoms, the classical idea of freedom has certainly been challenged. Now, when I say classical, let's talk about the definition. And when I was preparing for this webinar, it was interesting because I right back at the beginning of this club, back in 2016, I did a webinar called Liberated Living with the guys there, and I watched that the other day, and I was thinking, wow, some elements are completely the same, but also we moved on quite a bit since then as well. But I did then as well touch upon the definition of freedom. I think it's important to understand the classic before we go into the more alternative experience and relationship with freedom. So the classic definition of freedom is that it's the power to act, speak, and think as one wants. The power to act, speak, or think as one wants. Well, let's look at that for a second. I mean, it's pretty fair to say that all of them have been challenged in recent times. The ability to act, so the ability to do what you want, go to work, go to travel, go to the cinema, go to the shops, or whatever. And how you go about that has been challenged. Certain restrictions have come into play, certain hoops we have to jump through, or quite frankly, you risk arrest if you try to do these basic things. So that's been challenged. The power to speak and think. Well, there's a lot of censorship going on. Have you noticed? There's a lot of people getting deleted for just saying stuff that is a reasonable question. Questioning the narrative, questioning what we're being taught, looking at more sides of a story than just what is being presented. But if you try to go out there and talk about that, well, cancel culture is going to come knocking, and you're going to end up potentially deleted, just erased, because you don't have the freedom to say that at the moment. I don't believe this is going to be a long-term thing. I think this is a blip in the journey of humanity, but it is quite fascinating that if you dissect the classical definition of freedom on all three counts, because in a way, if you're not allowed to speak it, you shouldn't really be thinking it either. Let's be honest. They're trying to. There's certain powers that be at the moment that want to control what we're doing, what we're saying, and even what we're thinking. And if you're not careful, you could feel really unfree within the context of that sort of world and environment. Don't worry, we're going somewhere nice. It's not all doom and gloom, but I think we have to start with a reality check as to the classical ideas of what freedom is. Talking of which, the next part of the definition of freedom, the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. Well, there you go. We could talk about that for about 13 weeks. Have any of humanity been imprisoned recently? Now, obviously, it's not the classical idea, lock and key in a jail, but we have been invited, or strongly invited, to not leave our houses unless it's for a reason, and we have to justify our reason for ever wanting to do something other than get some food or whatever. So, imprisoned and enslaved. So we've all had our freedoms challenged, and so I really want to do the march to freedom. You might go, well, why do it now? We've been going through this for a year. There's light at the end of the tunnel. They've told us that they're going to release us soon if we do what we're told, and we, get do the thing and do this, that, and the next thing, and get the paperwork that proves it, and or the electronic whatever. You know what I'm talking about. So anyway, why talk about this now? It's because I think we don't want to miss an opportunity. Even if things do start opening up, it would be a wasted opportunity to go through this entire year and not find the true source of freedom. Not try to find the true source of freedom. Because although the classical idea of freedom is largely focused on the external, you know where I'm going with this? If you really want freedom, we've got to find it on the inside. We've got to look for the place where true freedom lies. Because if we find it there, then nobody and no rule, no regulation, no restriction, no lockdown can take it away. Now, I don't know if it's just my Scottish roots, but the amount of times I've heard William Wallace in my head over the last year, you know that phrase where he's saying, you can take our lives, but you can't take our freedom, or something like that anyway. He makes me embarrassed at how I'm losing my Scottish accent, the way he talks. But anyway, where is freedom found really? Well, this is where it really jumped out at me when I was looking at the dictionary definition I just mentioned. This idea of being imprisoned or enslaved. Who here would like to be imprisoned, enslaved? Hands up. Nobody? Cool. That's because in our hearts we want to be free. We were born free. We know we're free. We know freedom is possible. And that is probably why we are usually in the society punished by taking our freedom away, because it's the greatest thing that we should really be striving for, and I believe on a moment-to-moment basis, making sure that we are prioritizing our freedom, because it's the most important thing. And that's one of the reasons I believe why it is withdrawn as a form of punishment in the society at the moment. And I hope as humanity awakens, we're going to see that separation, isolation is actually not the way to help someone who clearly has a problem if they're doing things in society that is deserving of punishment. Actually, it's deserving of how do I help this person experience more peace, love, connection, oneness, worthiness. But that's a story for another day probably. But let me not get distracted. Being imprisoned or enslaved. Where is the real prison? And where is our real freedom? The real prison is our mind. Now, I'm not trying to be all negative about the mind, but let's call a spade for a second, okay? Where does the inner experience of imprisonment and enslavement come from? And can it exist without mind? Would be a question. If you don't believe the first statement, can it exist without mind? When you're fully present, when you're resting in the unbounded, infinite self, there's no sense of boundaries, there's no sense of limitations, there's no fear, there's no captivity, and there's no enslavement. Because most people are walking around slaves to their mind. We talked about it in the Mind Detox course, the juggernaut of judgments. Remember that bit? The juggernaut of judgments in the Mind Detox course on the club. If you haven't seen it, make sure you check it out. It's on the Club Hub resources. Juggernaut is a word that comes from two Sanskrit words, and it basically means to be enslaved, to have a master, to be a slave to a master. And most people are slaves to what their mind is telling them. Okay, the mind judges. We know it judges, but we are like, oh, you know, we can believe it, and we can have that mind starting to really govern us. That voice in our head telling us what to do, how to feel, what we're capable of, what we can do, what we can't do. The best way for an external society to imprison a population is to have them imprison themselves through fear, through their own voice doing the work for them, doing their own inner voice, making them believe that they aren't free. One of the biggest things I believe humanity is going through is that they're having an opportunity and an invitation to find true freedom and to find that they actually don't have to wait for someone else to give them permission to experience love, to experience peace, to experience the most adventurous of lives. So outside the prison of the mind is this infinite, unbounded, pristine, perfect heaven. And I use that word intentionally. Inside the mind, it can become a bit of a hell for some people, and it can become full of judgment and self-criticism and self-violence and resistance and perpetually waiting for something different, better, improved, fixed. One day I'll be there, one day I'll be worthy, one day I'll be enough, one day I'll be lovable, one day I can relax. But until then, I have to run for my life, proving and improving myself to be worthy of this, what I actually already am. So, to be free, I believe we need to unlock the door, realize we already had the key, and walk out of the mind. Now, don't get me wrong, guys. If you're new, I'm not just demonizing the mind or saying the mind is bad, but definitely it becomes unhelpful and a prison if we do not have a healthy relationship with our mind. If we get to a point where we start believing that we are our mind, and we are the voice in our head, and we become a slave to it because we just do and feel everything that it tells us to do or feel, then we have become enslaved by, believe it or not, something that isn't even real, something that doesn't even have power. We give it power. We are the source of power, and if we ever feel powerless, we are the ones that are giving it away. Whether that's conscious or not, we are giving our power away. And I think, again, humanity is coming to see that the powers that be aren't as powerful as we thought. In fact, just because they wear a little outfit or they have a little badge or whatever, they're just a person too, in fancy dress. But we give that concept power. We've been conditioned and raised to give that. Now, I'm not talking about going to your streets and whatever anarchy or whatever that, however it can be helpful at times. I'm not saying that we have to become anarchists in this conversation. Okay, I'm not recommending that necessarily. But what I am saying is that we first of all have to wake up and see where we're giving our power away and where we're giving our freedom away, because then we're actually back in a position where we can actually find freedom irrespective of what is going on in our external world and irrespective of what's happening. Okay, I personally have experienced the most free year of my entire life. One of the reasons was I got to see the last bits of the external world which I was giving my freedom away to. The last bits that I was relying on out there that I was still using without realizing I was using to justify my freedom and to give me happiness. One time was when we couldn't get back to the house. We couldn't get back home, and I was just, we're stuck in Mexico, and yes, you might go, well, you're stuck at the beach, stop complaining. However, and I admit that a little bit, but there was still a point. I remember one of my darkest moments, one of the biggest moments of my entire life was on a meditation retreat many years ago. And I was I was curled up in suffering. I was completely being beaten up by my mind, to the point I just wanted, I couldn't live with it. It was like this ache in my core. But guess what? I was experiencing that ache in my core sitting on a sun lounger in the Caribbean. And it was like, it made it even worse, to be honest, because there was this like no escape at all. Like, at least if it was like in a bad place and the weather was bad or whatever, I could justify my suffering. But it was so clear that moment that this voice was the cause of my suffering at the moment in time, because I had no right to be suffering. I should be happy. Every magazine and every media and every tourist, I don't even know if they have these, when you used to go to like a place where you buy holidays, and all of them are like on the beach, and it's like, you'll be happy here, spend your money and travel there and you'll be happy there, and I'd done that and I wasn't happy. In fact, I was suffering. And so that was a really big moment in my personal life. And I had another one last year when it was clear that we did not have a clue when we'd get home. And I saw this thought of, I'll be happy when I get home. And I was like, whoa, no, I won't. I absolutely won't. That's just a thought. I'll get home, and if I listen to this voice, it'll find something wrong about there too. And then I'll be happy once I get back to the beach. And it's what the mind does. It constantly throws our happiness, our peace, our joy, our love, the results of what we believe freedom is, into the future. Because let's face it, what do I mean by that, results of what freedom is? We believe if we're completely free, able to do what we want, and we have all the money in the world, we have all that sort of stuff, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be at peace. Then I can relax. But it's just a story. And it's a thinking pattern that if we don't transcend, it will just kick in later. So, to be free, we must reduce the reasons to need to leave the present moment. I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. Our freedom exists right now. It resides right now. It's right here. We are in we are in freedom. Okay? Here, always. The context of imprisonment is freedom. Okay? The context of the mind is absolute peace. It's already here. And any voice that tries to tell you you can't experience it until is lying to you. Okay? Let's just keep it really simple. Not just some of the voices. You don't have to figure out which one is true or not. All of them, anyone that's postponing your freedom is lying to you. Now, it's not intentionally lying. It's just a little bit misguided. Because the mind has never been here. Let me repeat. The mind has never been here. It's never been here. So it doesn't know. So it assumes it has to be somewhere else because it can't experience it in its world. Okay? So just assume if it's telling you, no, I can't be happy when this is happening in the world, when this might happen in my future, when I currently can't do this, when this is happening in my relationship, this is happening in my bank balance, or whatever, it's not true. It's just not true. And if we just assume that, then we're empowered and we're actually able to do something about it. Okay? So, what happens because the mind doesn't know how to experience freedom now? The mind is limitation. The mind is the construct. The mind is the walls. in which a person lives within. So if we want to get out of the mind and get back into paradise, then we need to know how to stop being so distracted by it. We need to be willing to reduce the reasons. And this march to freedom, this challenge that I'm setting you, is going to do that if you play along. It will reduce the reasons you need to leave paradise. It will reduce the reasons why you feel justified to leave paradise and jump back into the prison of the mind, with its restrictions, its fears, its limitations, and all that sort of stuff. I need you to hear this, because it will so simplify your journey and speed up your journey if you really, really hear this, okay? You don't need to fix. You don't have to repaint the prison, okay? You don't need to put pictures on the walls, cut the weeds outside the bars just to make it a bit of a prettier view. You don't need to, get a nice comfier couch in there, get a bigger TV. You need to open the door and walk yourself out, okay? Just open the door and walk yourself out. Where are you walking yourself out to? Back into here. Back into the moment. 100%. Okay? Don't leave any of you in the prison. It's a bit of an intense analogy, but is it landing? Is it okay? Does it sound? I didn't mean to come negative. I think it's an important analogy to really to emphasize the importance of what we're talking about here. We need to reduce the reasons to leave the present moment, because ultimately complete freedom is right here. Okay? Right here. So, why do we leave here? That's a good question. Thank you so much for Nick. Thanks, Nick, for asking that. Why do we leave here? It's a very good question. We leave here to control something, so that we can be free later, once we've done everything we need, so that we think that we need, so we can be free eventually, happy, peaceful, or whatever. We leave the moment to control something, okay? If you just didn't need to control anything right now, there'd be no reason to leave the moment. There'd be nothing to think about. It's incredible if you try it. And don't take my word for it. Really prove me wrong. That if you give it a shot, you're going to see there's a direct relationship with needing to control stuff and needing to think about stuff. The compulsion to leave the moment and go into the mind. There is a direct correlation between control and freedom. In fact, my spiritual teacher said to me years ago, the opposite of control is freedom. Okay, so there's like this spectrum almost, that the more in which you need to control stuff, the less free you are. Why? Because the more you need to control stuff so that you're okay, the more you're controlled by whatever you think needs to be a certain way for you to be okay. Said differently, the more you're okay, irrespective of what's going on, like you're Teflon and you're unshakable, rock solid peace, the more you can be that way, the more free you are. Because life can happen, but you're okay. That person's going to decide they don't like you. Doesn't matter. I don't mean to sound cold-hearted there, but I would say you don't suffer from it. Let's put it that way, okay? A rule comes in outside, but you're still completely free. It does not affect your peace one iota. But the more we need to fix, change, and improve things so it's exactly how we've been conditioned to believe it needs to be for us to be okay, then the less free we are. Why? Because we're being controlled by control, believe it or not. There's a little controller in there trying to control everything, and it's controlling us. And that's the irony of control. We think we're controlling stuff in order to have more choices and in order to have more freedom and peace and love and joy and whatever. But the irony is, by doing what that control is telling us, we're actually being controlled by the unseen controller. Okay? Does it make sense so far, guys? So is the inner controller controlling you? Is there an inner controller? Is there a controller in there? If there isn't, you'll already be perpetually here and experiencing unbounded peace, unconditional love, unbounded freedom. Okay? So If there's anything less than that, there's still a little bit of controller there. And it's okay. We all have them. Okay, don't worry about it. But we first need to see it so that we can surrender it and go beyond it. Okay, so is there a little controller in there that's actually controlling you? And had you seen it that from that perspective before? That the controller is actually controlling you. You're not your mind. You're not all the stuff that it does. Caroline says, control is my middle name. Maybe that's what the C stands for in my name too. Who knows? No, it's actually a good old Campbell. Yeah, Campbell. That's what the C stands for in my name. Campbell. Is it too late to change your name? Because like, I was saying this the other day, like my original name is Alexander Campbell Newbigging. That's a pretty good name, right? And then someone along the way called me Sandy, and it's like, I like Alexander, but anyway, let's not go there. I'm not going to try and I'll be happy irrespective of the name. Don't worry. But anyway, did you know I once changed my name by default and then changed it back because I realized I'd been a complete idiot? Did anyone? Have you ever heard that story? It's too embarrassing. I'm not going to tell you. Well, if you're very good, I might share the story at the end. But anyway, yeah, I once changed my name because I thought it was my name at that point. You're not your name, thank God. Anyway, let's keep going. So, control. We need to be willing to let go of this control. What causes the control? Conditioning. We're conditioned to control stuff. We've been conditioned to as to what a good life looks like. If you've been around for a while, you'll know. Catherine says, "Did you change your name to Obi-Wan?" No, I didn't. No. It was even more embarrassing than that. We've been conditioned to control stuff. We've been taught through our years, right from year dot, that what a good life looks like, what a successful life looks like. Sandra, you have been taught what a good Sandra life looks like. What sort of house you should be in, what sort of car you should drive, what sort of money you should have, what sort of person you should hang out with or be married to or whatever, what sort of environment, what sort of holidays to go on. And we've been conditioned in the nitty-gritty of the day as well, like what's a good thing that happens and what's a bad thing that happens. And so through all that conditioning, we've ended up feeling the need to control every orifice of existence so that it fits our ideas of what a good and free life looks like. That control leads to conflict. Conflict is where we end up either resisting what's happening because we believe it's wrong, bad, worse, negative, should not be happening, or we're resisting that because we've been conditioned to be attached to something else happening instead. So conflict is formed by kind of two opposing best friend forces. They're kind of the same coin, just opposite sides of the same coin. Resistance and attachment. Okay? And I'd love for you to see in your own experience, if this is true for you, that if you have any sort of unease, problem, anything other than paradise and peace this week, are you in a conflict with something? Is there something you're resisting because you're attached to something else happening instead? Are you unwilling to have the experience that life has just brought you? Is there a conditioned unwelcomeness to this, whatever this might be? The thing with conflict, it's a habit. I'm pretty sure no one wakes up in the morning and says, today I want to be in conflict as much as possible. I want to hurt myself. I want to create myself lots of anxiety and fear and upset and tension. I want to reduce my years on planet Earth through all the stress and the degrading of my cells because I'm so much in conflict with life. You know, guys, I'm actually 78 years old. You know, if you just don't be in conflict, it's really good for the skin and nobody wakes up in the morning wanting to be in conflict. I've asked I've asked a lot of people, thousands of people, definitely. What do you want more than anything else? If you had a magic wand and you could have one thing, what would you ask for? Hands up, how many people wanted conflict? Nobody wants conflict. Nobody wakes up wanting conflict. Even in an argument, which they're really desperate to win, they don't want the argument, really. Everyone I've talked to wants peace, love, joy, freedom, liberation, to know who they really are, to experience oneness with Source, to know God, or whatever word they might use. It's never conflict. It's weird. So that's why I want to do this challenge with you, because it's not like we're doing it on purpose, but if we all kind of bring our focus to really wanting to do something about it, to like make it like a genuine challenge, a thing that we're playing with right now, then maybe if they do pop up in your day, you're going to have the focus and the invitation to do something about it then and there. Okay? So it's okay if it pops up, if a conflict presents itself. How do you know you're going to be in conflict? Well, like I say, you're not going to be in peace or paradise. You're going to be experiencing some sort of tension, some sort of negative emotion, anger or frustration, discontentment, guilt, regret, some sadness, fear. They're all symptoms of separation. They're all symptoms of conflict. Okay? That makes sense? So it's going to be pretty easy. If you're worried about something, conflict. If anything in your past is unresolved, there's a conflict there. It just means that you're still resisting it because you're still attached to something else happening instead. Okay, so anything that might be unresolved in the past, also a conflict. It shows up everywhere, and it's really good news because it really simplifies our journey. Because freedom is increased as we reduce resistance. Freedom is increased as we appease our attachments. Freedom is increased as we clear our conflicts. And freedom is ultimately maximized when we've minimized our need to control what's happening. Okay? Now, this doesn't mean you can't have preferences, like I say. It doesn't mean you just give up on trying to achieve anything or doing it with your day. I'm not saying just give up and you might as well just sit on the couch. I'm not saying that. I'm saying as you go about your day, I'm inviting you to have a complete harmony with what is, with what's showing up right now, whatever it's showing up. And the degree to which there isn't harmony is the degree to which there's going to be some kind of conflict, resistance, attachment, judgment. You're going to be kind of stepping back into through the doors of our own mind-made prison. So freedom ultimately is the willingness to experience anything. Not just the willingness, but the excitement to experience anything, the celebration to experience anything, and the ability to do so without suffering. Freedom is the willingness to experience anything and the ability to do so without suffering. And I had to add that bit after a couple of years of sharing the first part of that quote, because I tell someone freedom is the willingness to experience anything, and they'd almost get some body armor on and their sword and their shield, and they'd be like, come on then, life, give me your best shot. Now, if you're still kind of living like that, you've kind of missed the point of purifying your perception so that you can see beyond problems, and you're kind of still perceiving a world as a me against the world, or me against life, or me against others, and like this this kind of inner warriors. This is not it's the path of the hero, but it's not the path of like fighting life. It's actually a path of loving everything. Now, that's pretty hard. How do you love everything? Well, don't try and love everything from your head is a good place to start. Because if you try to love everything from your head, it's going to be pretty hard because your mind operates from judgment. So don't try and look for loving everything there. We talked about that last month. See previous love theme videos and stuff. But we're here to recognize that we are not separate from Source, and everything is Source. And that's on our belief. That is absolute reality. You cannot love the creator while hating creation, or vice versa. They're one and the same. Okay? And we have front row seats at this thing called creation. I was having this conversation with one of my great clients earlier. He's an amazing guy. And what were we talking about before I forget that? We were talking about creation. Yeah, I said, if before you got this human body, before, like, they're kind of, you're somewhere in the ethers or whatever, right? And imagine like there's like jobs being given out, okay? And there's this job, and it's like you're looking through the jobs for humans, like what you're going to do when you get here, right? And in the classifieds, one of it says observer of creation. I think I would have circled that with my red pen and go, yeah, I'll have a bit of that. Yeah, I'll go there and be the observer of creation. That sounds really good. Now, why am I saying this? Because that's ultimately what we're here to do, I believe. We're here to observe and experience creation as it's creating. Not interfere so much, not resist it so much, not judge the hell out of it so much, but actually welcome it and be willing to experience whatever is being created. Because ultimately, the creator is creating, creation is creating. And we have front row seats at this thing. It's pretty marvelous. But unfortunately, we leave just the observing and the creating of creation, and we start talking about it and judging the hell out of it. And it becomes like the brightness and the awe of it and the adventure and the magic and the mystery of it. And it seems to get faded the more we go into this and start, well, this sucks. This isn't what I thought it should be. This is wrong, bad, worse, negative, It was better later, or it was better earlier, or why did I not make that better decision last time or earlier? And if I'd just done something differently, it'd be different now. And we're all in here missing this wonderful creation. So we are here to welcome it. I'm not saying you have to agree with it to welcome it, but you at least want to play with the possibility that, or pretend that you planned for everything that happened. Just play with the possibility that everything happens in the next month is actually what you wanted. Does that mean you have to accept stuff that you don't agree with? Absolutely not. I'm currently not in line to do anything right now, if you know what I'm talking about. I'm not. I don't choose to do that myself, and I believe we still have the freedom to choose. So if I get new information, I might come to a new conclusion, and I might make a bit different decisions. So I'm not stuck to that position. But at the current time, with the information I have available, I will not be choosing to do such a thing. So there is a point to what I'm saying. You don't have to say yes to everything. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to just be like, well, this is what's presenting. That you can have preferences and you can use discernment in this. But the suffering happens if you start an internal fight with it. And there's a difference. Okay? It's this inner fight. This inner resistance, this inner attachment, this inner conflict and control. And here's the cool thing. All of that suffering happens when the thing we're worried about or annoyed about or whatever isn't even happening yet or anymore. Isn't that the funny thing? I know a lot of people have been worried for months and it's not happened at any point in that few months. So I would say that's a bit of a wasted worry, to be honest. You can know and you can know what you know and commit to a decision that you're willing to change in the future with better information or whatever. But why go through all that struggle and suffering and negativity and energy draining stuff? You see where we're going with this, guys? So it's just this welcoming. So we are at peace irrespective of what's happening. We are free from our mind. We are free from judgment. We are free from the fear of how we might feel. We're free from the having to manage our energy all the time and emotions all the time. We're free from needing people to think certain things about us and feel certain things towards us for us to be okay. We're free. We're free.